All right, right on time. Ben, do you want to share the screen? And you guys are welcome to take it over, to take it away whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, our team is group three, and we focused on building a utility tool that would allow us, or allow the consumers in North Carolina who to better understand who their water comes from. So Peyton, if you want to start with talking about kind of how we started building this project.
Yeah, sure. So this project is a little bit different than a lot of the other Data Plus projects because instead of doing data analysis, it's more about data visualizations. So we broke it into two parts. One is making a usable source for consumers, like Ben had said, so consumers can find their water utility supplier based on their address and gain some more information about that. And then also a map for more, I guess, advanced users, for utility supply companies, and to see more detailed information about supply as it changes over time from different sites. So this is our homepage. And then we have 4 pages on our website. Next is Meet the Team, which is fairly simple, basic. And then the utility finder is the first aspect meant for consumers. So we're gonna.
Oh yeah, do you wanna? Sorry.
We're gonna do 2 addresses to show an example about how it works. Our first one was the Duke Chapel. Ben can take it away.
So as we built this tool, we wanted to better understand kind of what a user would go through when they're trying to find out what who their utility is and who served their water. So we wanted to create a screen that was pretty basic and simple that gave them the opportunity to input their data and not feel like they were necessarily disclosing a lot of personal data about themselves, but also just enough that would allow us to locate and find where they are on a North Carolina map and better understand help visualize where they're living and who serves their water. So through just a simple submit button, we're then taken to a page that will demonstrate another aspect of our project. So Roy, if you want to talk briefly about how you helped build this map.
Yeah, sure. So basically we have the data from the client, and then we map all the data to the website. And as you can see, like different polygons have different colors, and we randomize all the polygons based on their PWS ID, which is a number, and it's specific for each one of the utility. And also we've created boundaries so users can see the see different polygons clearly from each other. And there's an interaction part of the map. If you click on one of the map, then the legend on the top left will be filled out with the PWS ID and the name of that specific water facility. And also, if you click on the map, you will be highlighted, and if you leave your mouse, you will be deactivated.
So the main focus here was allowing users to very clearly see who their utility is and give them some very simple information about each of their utilities in a legend, as well as on the side here, without cluttering them with a lot of unnecessary information, and then also linking them to some information about the utility themselves. This link here takes you off of our page and over to ncwater.org, and each respective utility here has its own page dedicated to information about the utility. Here lists plenty of contact information as well as just general information about the distribution system and the other infrastructure that helps you get your water. We felt like a lot of this information was tucked away on the internet and hidden in places that aren't very accessible to the user. So a lot of this is just making a very basic, easy system to get the user directly to their information, to a contact, so that they can have control over, how they interface with their water, where it comes from, who's providing it, and make complaints if they disagree with certain aspects of it. So moving on from here is our interactive map feature, which is another important aspect of our webpage.
Interactive map is one of the cooler pages of our website, and you can see on the side you can click which type of aspect you want to view, whether it's lakes, streams, ditches, canals, estuaries, and wells. Each of them has its own icon that will display when you click on them. And you can see Ben clicking on different lakes. We also made sure to have different types of hover features. If you hover over the utility areas or you hover over the actual sites, you can, like, information pops up. And if you click on those, then will display a graph over the past year about how the supply has varied. But you can change the dates in those so that you can go back. Some of them go back as far as 30 years, which is really interesting to see. And then you can click on or off click on some of the different attributes of the graph to see whether you want, like, in your date frame, or if you want, like, the all-time data, whatever you care most about, you can click on no, which is pretty interesting. And we have obviously a legend there in the corner so you can see which specific time you're looking at.
So the way that we handled this was through a SQL database. So this data would be stored by running constantly running Python scripts that would allow us to collect the data from the NWIS website, which is where all of this data is hosted. It is then passed onto the SQL database. And then from there, this page makes a call to the database every time you click on an icon. So it's a unique call every single time you click that pulls just the data you ask for based on the start and end date and which data you have selected here. And that will allow you to see your very specific data. It loads very quickly. You don't have to wait a long time to see any sort of data. It switches between them pretty fluidly. And then if there's an instance in which, I don't know if any of these links will provide a good example for it, sometimes there won't be data. And if that's the case, you get a good notification that tells you there's no data in this date range. That doesn't mean there's no data for that site in general. It just means that you're limited by the date you're looking for. Some sites are no longer operational, so you have to go back further to see them, see the data provided for each of them.
Another interesting feature that was somewhat of a challenge for us was making this self-updating, so that each day there's new data. It takes the data from yesterday and adds it to the graph. So as you can see, it goes all the way up to the 28th today. And we did this with a cron job edition, which will go call the website and add data to our SQL database.
Yeah. So kind of our intentions with this were to, create a resource and a tool that was both accessible, kind of almost fun to play with. We're currently hosting it through a domain tied to our project, the people who contracted us to do this. This is actually up for anyone to use. It's on HTTPS, which we're able to do with some help from our client. And that means it's secure, so you can feel safe about using this website. And it allows for a good number of people to use it at a time. So if you'd like to go explore our page, you're welcome to. We hope that this kind of serves as a good baseline for potentially using this information to forecast and predict the way certain things happen. If you can, visualize data like this, and you can look at trends at which there were droughts or things like that, there's a good chance that you could use then this data to make predictions about what is going to happen based on the past week, the past month. Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it. If anyone has any questions.
Thanks a lot. That was really cool. There. So the link is in the chat now. If anybody wants to go click on it. So does anyone want to? Does anyone have any questions or want to kick off with the discussion? I always feel like I have plenty of things that I want to know about, but I don't want to dominate too much either. So I guess while folks are thinking, one of the things, so there's a lot of white space on this map. So what do people do who don't live within these utility regions?
So basically it's because they don't have some centralized water facilities. Like those are like rural areas. And if you take a look at the cities, like where people have a high population density, there's always some water facilities.
Yeah, our map shows all the major water utility sites, whereas some like areas where they show the wells, those wells aren't necessarily connected to these water utilities. They supply water to the area that surrounds them, but not directly through like a sub company.
Gotcha. So there'll be, so like the townships may provide their own like pump stations, wells for reservoirs and like water towers and stuff like that, but that won't appear on this map and stuff like that.
We mapped, 532 water facilities, but technically if you're going to go through like how many people provide water, it goes down to every single 7-Eleven that provides like whatnot. So there are way more water suppliers, but they're not actually like major utilities to map.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A big part of that was just operating under the assumption that I think a lot of the time, if you're on well water, you're probably aware that you're on well water. And I think that this is bringing to light for a lot of people who provides their water if you say live in an apartment complex or you live somewhere that you won't see your water bill. And so you won't know who is providing your water because unless you look on your water bill, it's very hard to go find who your water provider is. So we hope that this tool is kind of a way to bridge that informational gap.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really nice point. And the other, so in terms of the company, this is fantastic. The other sort of natural thing that, you know, if I was just poking around is I would say, okay, you know, so I know who's providing my water, but I don't know where my water's coming from necessarily. And so like, I know Durham, like I think North Durham gets its water from Falls Lake and South Durham gets its water from Jordan Lake. So is that data available? Like, you know, in terms of given that I'm at this location, like what's my watershed essentially?
That was the point with our adding the link to the utility finder page, so that when you know what your supply company is, you can look into the specific details about where they get their water and more, kind of what you're asking.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So we're hoping that somehow through this process of being able to show these different bodies of water, it would help kind of our understanding of how they're linked. But it was hard for us to, without web scraping each of the individual web pages for the utilities, it was hard to find exactly where they're getting like their water from, like in respect to bodies of water. Yeah. But that's something we would like to do in the future if this were to continue.
Cool. So Brene Ben asks, this is she just comments, this is beautiful. Kudos to the team for creating a very nice looking visual in addition to being functional and very accessible. So yeah, it was really nice. Megan Mullen asks, who is the primary audience? The public, state, and federal oversight agencies, the utilities themselves?
Well, we think it's the public because, I mean, one of the objectives of providing the map is to make sure we have the transparency level so the public can see what kind of water facilities that cover the area and they can check on those water facilities. And so, yeah, public is the primary audience for this map.
Yeah, in one of our last presentations, Roy made a really good point about how utility companies, you don't really have the choice of which utility you want to give your service to. It's just based on where you live. So we thought that it was valuable for people to be able to understand a little bit more about their utility, to advocate for changes they want to see, because they don't have the option to switch companies if they're not happy with how things are working out.
And Megan adds, utilities could learn about their neighbors, which might help them look at strategies to improve their resilience, which is a really nice point. And it makes me wonder, to what extent do utilities drawing from the same source cooperate or compete with one another?
So we're aware that the triangle utility companies, there's a conglomerate that this product is being kind of marketed towards as well. As something that so the Internet of Water, who we've been working with, they're also trying to build a tool that allows utilities to, in real time, change their boundaries if they were to expand or have make certain adjustments. And the hope is that somehow that would interface with our map so that it would be reflected, so that the public would be able to see those things happen in real time as well. But it seems like there are these groups of utilities that exist within certain areas, and the triangle is one of them. And I imagine they exist outside of the triangle as well. But it is good to know that they are interfacing to an extent and communicating about these issues to better understand, especially knowing that utilities are often struggling with funds, and they have to kind of work together to make progress because they're not necessarily the most well-funded government projects.
Just as a personal anecdote, when I first came to the Triangle, the Triangle was in a drought, and I think there was like something like less than 30 days of water were left in the reservoirs. And just looking at Jordan Lake down there, it's like Jordan Lake is being drawn by, it looks like Apex, Durham, and Chapel Hill all at the same time. So it makes me, there's all sorts of questions about how this stuff is regulated and who gets to take how much water and all that type of stuff. Are there other things that folks want to talk about in terms of the utilities and waterways in Durham or in North Carolina? I guess one thing that I wonder about too is that, so this is a really great tool for the public. I could see something like this being expanded, whereas if you started putting in, so you already have the infrastructure of the dams, it looks like, but you could put in infrastructure of water towers, of pump stations, where the stuff lives, elevations, things along these lines. Like, I mean, I imagine that's a big project and well beyond the scope of what you're trying to do. But in terms of the people you've been talking with and how you've been thinking about this as a project, I guess the question I have is, where, if you were going to continue to expand this and make this more and more useful to people, where would you want to take this next?
I think that's a great question. You kind of answered it yourself, and the fact that it would be really cool to see where the surface water and groundwater attributes connect to each utility, because I think that's pretty important, other than going directly to the websites themselves. That's what I think.
Yeah, something that feels really accessible too is that when we were getting this data, we were kind of selective about it because we were concerned about overwhelming our database and having this be very taxing to load so frequently. But knowing that it has a pretty good load speed, I think we saw that the NWIS, the way that they collect their data, they have thousands of data points, like their categories for how you can see water quality, and you can see, different types of precipitation and temperatures and things like that. All of that can be accessed and pulled relatively easily, especially now that we've set this up. So if you wanted even finer tuned data in terms of how you wanted to see, how your water quality is, or how things have looked in the past year in terms of temperatures. All of those things are accessible. And I think that having that feel so close in reach to what we've done so far, albeit outside of the scope of what we were actually doing this time around, makes it seem like this could be very easily expanded upon and made even more informative.
Cool. PU was asking, what do the colors on the boundaries mean?
The colors are just random. And we basically use the PWS ID. It's like an ID number for each one of the water facility. And so that number is unique for each one of them. And we have a sheet of colors that correspond to different PWS ID. It's like a range. So we use that to randomize the color. And the reason for us to randomize the color is because if we use the same color, it's going to be very hard to differentiate one water facility from another. So to make the users more comfortable with it, we decided to randomize the color.
I guess that makes me want to follow up with, like, it looks like Raleigh is a very strange and fractured system. I mean, I assume Raleigh is the one that's directly east with the blue. Oh no, Raleigh's down there. Okay. Oh, I see. That's Raleigh. Okay. So then, like, what is that? Franklin County sewer system. So I was just wondering what's the deal with some of these very interesting looking shapes?
So our interpretation of why a lot of this like fracturing occurs is that at least for how this boundary decided to outline their specific bounds, they probably go strictly down like streets and like on top of houses. So I don't know if I can get the fine grain to represent this, but I imagine that a certain amount of this is like leaving out like ponds and things like that, where like it's a natural, or if there isn't a building using water in that space, it would not actually cover that, versus Durham or Raleigh, where they actually just cover the whole area and say, this is all us. And that might have something to do with actually how their infrastructure is set up, or it was simply a choice in how they decide to map their boundaries and say, we're gonna say we're covering these like streets and things like that, and not say we're covering these in between areas.
It almost looks like they've cut out particular houses and properties within the region. There's another question. Some of these systems are drawn. Oh, there's a comment. Some of the systems are drawn by utilities over a general area. Some of the boundaries were drawn based on pipe data in specific parcels. And so Megan comments that the boundary maps for many of these systems were created by Duke students from pipe maps. Oh, interesting. Megan, do you know when that was done, or who was responsible for that?
Hi, yeah. Oops. Hi, sorry, I had to switch computers. The pipe maps were created over a 2-year period by a group of students from Nicholas School, from Pratt, from Arts and Sciences, and they used maps, analog maps that had been submitted to Division of Environmental Quality, Department of Environmental Quality at NCDEQ. And many of these maps were just pipe maps. And so they overlaid it, right, with parcel data, and made various boundary rules to estimate the service area served by these utilities. And so for most of these systems, we can assume that a lot of the holes you're seeing, right, when you look at these like Swiss cheese maps, we can assume that a lot of those holes are actually being served by the systems, because the pipe maps don't always show the smallest pipes, right, that go to like households. But you don't want to assume too much, because when they're county systems, they might actually have other small municipalities that are serving inside some of those holes.
Yeah, that's cool, thanks.
Yeah, we had a brief opportunity to speak in the past about kind of the history of how these boundaries got set up. And it's interesting to think that only 2 years ago have these really been digitized well. And even with that, still having their own, forthcomings, and so I think, or shortcomings. And so it's, it definitely represents this idea that we still have a long way to go in terms of making this data up to date and modern and accessible. So.
What's really great about this project is it shows what once we get those maps in place, it shows what a resource they can be. And it's a minority of states that have any kind of map like this at all. Maybe 15 or so states in the United States that have generated these kind of service area maps. Now that you all have done this good work to create this resource from them, it helps make the case to other states to invest in that effort to really understand where their service areas are.
Yeah. Are there other questions or curiosities or comments that people have? So I think with that, let's thank the group for a really nice presentation and a really nice interface as well. So thanks a lot. I'll give you the Zoom applause and the real applause. So we're going to have another roughly 7-minute break until the final presentation of the morning session. This last talk is going to be on, I have to pull it up, human activity recognition.